Hi everyone, it's Hax. I'm producing what will probably be my final video on this subject, as I've narrowed things down to the most important information that I need to share with people. As I emphasized last week, I'd appreciate if the evidence in this video could be given a fair review that isn't tainted by anything I released several years ago. I know for a fact that I'm in possession of evidence that's important to organize properly so that the general public can see the truth about what happened within the Smash community back during a time period when things weren't so clear. I'll look to keep everything concise and straightforward. This video will look to address a major issue that can still be seen on social media today, which are the murmurs of a conspiracy within the Smash community. I'm partially responsible for people hearing these murmurs, as can be seen in these tweets which mention my name. I'll be very clear about what this conspiracy entailed. Within the summer 2020 Me Too movement, it's true that Leffen and Jisoo conspired to remove the player Zero from the Smash community with the intention of personal gain. 5 months later, Leffen manipulated the film director Samox into removing all traces of Evidence.zip from the metagame documentary. Evidence.zip is a lengthy expose about Leffen that was compiled in 2013, which can be used to observe the truth about the conspiracy. This sequence of events is notable because most of it was indiscernible back when it was actively happening. However, I unavoidably witnessed it due to the evidence in my possession. The portion of this crime which involved Leffen and Jisoo conspiring was eventually covered by the content creator Technicals on June 25, 2021. Technicals published a video called The Truth Behind the Sky House on that date, which raised these allegations and revealed considerable amounts of proof of Jisoo's guilt. Something a lot of my friends failed to understand during this time period was why I refused to back down on the fact that Technicals was correct. At the time, I didn't know that he was someone who had a bad reputation within the Smash community, but regardless, I would never let a bad reputation prevent me from recognizing that someone is speaking the truth. The reason I knew that these allegations were true was because I'm in possession of Evidence.zip. As I explained last week, Evidence.zip is a lengthy expose that was written about Leffen back in 2013. Whenever Evidence.zip gets brought up to the newer generation, people almost always say that it couldn't possibly be relevant anymore due to how old it is. However, I'd argue that that couldn't be further from the truth. If Evidence.zip wasn't relevant, then Leffen wouldn't be going as far as to censor documentaries such as Metagame in order to conceal it. This video will show how I witnessed this conspiracy through the lens of the Evidence.zip testimonies. I'd argue that this conspiracy was a lot more elaborate than anyone else in the community could have told you, as the Metagame documentary was doctored 5 months afterward in order to wipe every trace of these testimonies. The truth about Evidence.zip was then replaced with an episode which doesn't mention it at all. The allegations I just raised are the two main ones that are listed as defamation charges in my Melee community ban statement. As I've expressed many times, the original video I produced several years ago had poor optics, and so I don't fault anyone for failing to recognize the truth behind these two statements. However, both of them are true. The reason I want people to know this is not only for the sake of proving my own innocence, but also because I feel guilt whenever I see tweets which express confusion over this subject. If you type in the words Leffen Jisoo on Twitter, for example, you'll find a lot of tweets which mention that their actions went unnoticed within the Smash community, or that people can't tell whether or not their conspiracy was something that actually happened. Some people even seem to think that I'm the one to blame in this situation. This video will look to resolve this mass confusion. In terms of why I believe this video is important to preserve as a public record, it's mainly for the sake of showing how extensively Leffen manipulated the general public during that time period. I would recommend disregarding Jisoo and Zero as entities almost entirely when viewing this video, as their actions and roles are unimportant in comparison to Leffen's. I've been in the Smash scene since 2005, and I can safely say that what Leffen did within the span of those 11 months constituted the most elaborate manipulation to ever take place in the community's history. I hope that community leaders see why it's virtually an obligation for me to provide this video as a witness account. Without further ado, I'll proceed to explain the crime Leffen committed. In order to refresh people's memories, I'll start with a recap of what the general public saw during the relevant time period. In the summer of 2020, the Smash community was shocked to find out that many of its members were sexual predators. The Me Too movement which emerged that year saw the removal of many well-known members of the community. Back then, the grieving masses looked to community leaders to comfort them during difficult times. Leffen emerged as the most prominent leader during this time period through a series of tweets which were well received and had a high amount of interactions. He then posted a YouTube video on July 2nd, 2020, which would end up receiving nearly 1 million hits. This video was met with unanimous approval. Later that day, Leffen thanked everyone for listening to him and advised people to continue listening to those who were brave enough to come forward. He then signed off of social media at 7:38 p.m. EST. Jisoo came forward 32 minutes later with a set of allegations against Zero. Early the next morning, Leffen released a twitlonger in which he advised people to support Jisoo's allegations. Within Leffen's TwitLonger, he provided a testimony which included a story that took place during Apex 2013 in order to further Jisoo's credibility. Things escalated from there, and Zero was eventually deemed guilty and cancelled. Leffen was heavily involved in Zero's removal from the community, as can be seen in this interaction. Something to note is that Zero was accused by a separate party named Katie during the Me Too movement. This meant that Zero's removal from the community was perceived as being justified for two reasons: his involvement with Katie and his involvement with Jisoo. 5 months later, Samox aired the metagame documentary on December 11, 2020. Leffen was quick to express that he was being defamed by the mentions of Evidence.zip which took place during the second day of the broadcast. This led to Samox agreeing to censor Evidence.zip related allegations from metagame. 4 months later, Samox returned on April 24, 2021 to announce that he'd be making it up to Leffen with a 9th episode titled Godslayer. That episode would eventually air on June 5, 2021. Samox would go on to win awards for his stellar work on the metagame documentary. Now I'll explain what I saw during that time period. The true story actually began on February 9, 2013. That was the day when Armada announced to Smashboards that Sweden would be banning Leffen for 1 year. At the bottom of Armada's post, it mentioned that there were private testimonies which contained sensitive information. I was the one who emailed these testimonies to Bobak Vakili 12 days later on February 21, 2013. 3 days later, I contacted Mr. Wizard as well. Something notable that I told Mr. Wizard twice within our email chain was that I felt that Leffen would go on to commit crimes someday based on what I was reading. I said this to Mr. Wizard for a lot of reasons. One of them was the way in which Leffen had been pinned to the wall with evidence, yet refused to confess to anything. Another one was the testimony that was written by someone named Kaye Strandberg. Kaye's testimony contained an excerpt which always stuck out to me. It read, "We are in a community and in a scene that's being manipulated by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what Leffen and his sympathizers manipulate people into believing is going on and what's really going on is absolutely enormous. The vastness and level of psychological warfare Leffen exhibits toward his prospects is one of the most elaborate acts of vicious intent I've had the misfortune of witnessing firsthand. This ongoing torment his viciousness forces his prospects to endure, directly and indirectly by leaving them as sole beneficiary to all of the consequences his actions may cause, which is why they evidently always end up being the ones paying the price and taking its toll." This excerpt always stuck out to me because of how incredibly descriptive it is, and also because it felt like the description of a modus operandi. This will come into play later on. 7 years after Evidence.zip was compiled, Leffen took the helm of the summer 2020 Me Too movement. I was the only person in possession of Evidence.zip by that point, and so that left me as the only person in the community who could have easily interpreted his intentions. What I'll generally advise is that this YouTube video should either be banned or given an advisory, as Leffen lies throughout the entirety of it. The only lie you need to hear in order to know that is this one.
As things went on, I think I made a name for myself pretty quickly in the community, and I definitely did not do everything right. People know about the Evidence.zip, and although I do not think that was deserved, like being banned for it.
The reason this lie makes no sense whatsoever is because Leffen doesn't even know what Evidence.zip is in reference to. At the time Leffen told this lie, he knew that Evidence.zip was a phrase used to describe his 2013 ban, but what he didn't know is that detailed testimonies corresponded with his ban back then. This gets much worse when you go into the testimonies and read what they said. The cover letter directly suggested that Leffen is a manipulator, a liar, and a threat to society. Nearly every other testimony in Evidence.zip trickled down from this. For example, Carl's testimony alleged that Leffen is a chronic liar and narcissist to a sick degree, and that he was intent on ripping apart people's social lives and the entire Smash scene. From there, Leffen logged off of social media and advised people to keep believing in those who were brave enough to come forward. Jisoo then came forward with a set of allegations against Zero. Contrary to what the general public thought was going on at the time, this was a premeditated conspiracy. This is obvious based on excerpts such as, what has in the end lowered my opinion of Leffen is his constant scheming to bring down people who he dislikes. It seems as though he constantly divides up people into winners and losers, friends and enemies, and viciously goes after the latter category with lies and other tactics whenever he gets an opportunity. There's also an excerpt which advises that Leffen will go to unheard of lengths in order to destroy people's reputations. Carl's testimony contains an example of how Leffen would do that. Carl alleged that at one point Leffen wrote up a pastebin full of lies and sent it around for people to read in order to hurt Carl's reputation. This is actually very similar to Jisoo's set of allegations. Next, Leffen published a TwitLonger which advised people to support Jisoo's allegations. Within the TwitLonger, Leffen included many statements which were intended to manipulate the reader. The most glaring one was when he claimed that he wasn't intent on canceling Zero. This is clearly malicious if you know the truth about what Leffen did to Nicholas Ringberger. Nicholas Ringberger was the boy with the hearing aid who surely many people have heard of. Within his testimony, Nicholas alleged that Leffen would work to exclude him from the Smash community to the highest degree possible. Nicholas explained that in the summer of 2011, Leffen manipulated a friend of theirs into not inviting Nicholas to Smash Fests. Leffen also looked to prevent Nicholas from attending Apex 2012. At one point, Leffen even told Nicholas, "Good luck going to the upcoming tournaments in Norway and Finland unless you arrange your own trip there, since I alone completely decide who gets to travel in the car." These excerpts show that ostracism is Leffen's modus operandi, and so his twitlonger about Zero shouldn't have been trusted. The situation then escalated into an interaction which involved Zero DMing Leffen in order to try to figure out why he appeared to be acting with ulterior motives. Leffen blocked Zero immediately after seeing this. This is corroborated by an excerpt from Kai Stromberg's testimony which reads, "I've tried contacting and talking to Leffen on several occasions without any result, but with a pounding heart I wasn't going to take no for an answer, and after having reached out several times just to be dismissed and ignored, he realized I wasn't giving in to his hatred, so he made a promise to contact me when he got the time for it. Sadly, this never happened, or shall I say, hasn't happened, because as you might understand, I still wish he would start opening up to people, talking with them and explaining his issues if there are any. But he seems to be less interested in keeping a healthy relationship with his prospects. In fact, it seems he thrives on making other people miserable by acting maliciously toward them, spreading false rumors and manipulating people into disliking them. He has changed the social atmosphere around people and the scene as a whole for the worse. He's caused undeserved hatred toward innocent people and solely managed to instigate people spreading this hatred around like wildfire. This excerpt perfectly explains Leffen's decision to refuse to speak with Zero. At this time, Zero's removal from the community was perceived as being justified for two reasons: his involvement with Katie and his involvement with Jisoo. However, Zero was only guilty of his involvement with Katie. He was simultaneously the target of an illegal conspiracy which was plotted by Leffen and Jisoo. Fast forward 5 months, and Samox aired the metagame documentary on December 11, 2020. From my perspective, the metagame documentary was notable for the footage that was played during the second day of the broadcast. There were originally mentions of some of the people who testified against Leffen in 2013 within this documentary. The glimpses metagame contained of the Evidence.zip victims were brutally honest, which caught Leffen off guard. This led to him intervening by telling Samox that his coverage was defamatory. Samox had no choice but to succumb to the pressure he was faced with that night by agreeing to remove Evidence.zip related allegations. Samox then came back 4 months later with an episode that would feature Leffen. That episode would air on June 5, 2021. In my opinion, this episode should be banned, just like the Me Too video from 11 months prior, as it completely revises history. The episode doesn't contain any mentions of the testimonies I've shown you throughout this video, which could have been used to gain a lot of insight into the events that were going on within the Smash community during that time period. On September 9, 2022, Zero returned to announce that he'd resolved the lawsuit with Jisoo. Within Zero's video, he explained that Jisoo's allegations had been retracted as part of a settlement. Zero's video also included a segment in which he described how Leffen targeted him during the 2020 Me Too movement.
Finally, to get this off my chest, I think Leffen is still the biggest perpetrator in my entire situation. He lied in a story to make me look worse in a critical moment, a story in which I have witnesses in person who were there to witness what actually happened. Witnesses who have made statements to say that Leffen was lying. And these are not random players. These are well-established top players in Japan. He also made a video that got over 1 million views, tarnishing my name and profiting off of it as well. He also tried to make himself sound as one of my great friends just to validate his claims further. And despite being somebody that at every single turn in this entire situation kept trying to bury me down, kept trying to make sure I was well below multiple feet underground, he still had the audacity to act as if he cared. When I made an attempt to take my life and I was in the hospital, he has the audacity to go on Twitter and make a comment and pretend he cared, when he himself is one of the largest drivers to that scenario, getting as much bad attention and as big of a hate mob possible. And that is what all the tweets, all the videos, all the streams he made covering my situation. To this day, all he's done is ignore the situation. He's never offered any type of remorse or any type of apology whatsoever. And he even went as far as signing over his false story as evidence against my legal matters.
This excerpt from Zero's video brings things back to Kai Stromberg's testimony, which I mentioned earlier on. Kai's testimony explained that there tends to be a chasm between what Leffen and his sympathizers manipulate people into believing is going on and what is really going on. This excerpt practically foretold what would happen to the Smash community during the Me Too movement. In case you're wondering how Leffen handled the droves of people who flocked to him after the situation was blown open by technicals, he simply mass blocked them until they gave up. This clip shows that he would quite literally ban people from his stream if they even dared to mention the situation. Victor Johansson explained this many years ago when he wrote, "Leffen has on several occasions edited or removed his own posts in order to embellish himself, which clearly shows that he's a dishonest person." Leffen also mass-manipulated social media platforms such as Reddit when he advised people not to trust in technicals. If you read the comments underneath Leffen's Me Too video today, there are many people who express the importance of seeking out the factual truth and not blindly trusting in people just because you feel an emotional attachment to them. In this case, it's true that the Smash community should have trusted technicals, not Leffen. The consequences this conspiracy had on the community are fairly extreme. When I made a tweet in October which suggested that I miss being able to attend big events, there were some polar opposite responses to it. One response suggested that I shouldn't be allowed to come back until I apologized to Leffen and Jisoo in more detail. Another response suggested that Leffen doesn't deserve anything because of the conspiracy he and Jisoo orchestrated. As usual, there's an excerpt from Evidence.zip which explains this divide. Nicholas Ringberger's testimony explained that Leffen's lies have on multiple occasions caused other Smashers to become angry with each other. In some cases, he's even manipulated people into hating each other. This is very unsafe when applied to someone who has 300,000 followers on social media. The entire Smash community failed to gauge Leffen's intentions correctly during the Me Too movement which took place a few years ago. This led to community outlets blasting me for interpreting his intentions correctly, which contributed to how I was expelled from the community. Now that I've provided the two perspectives, I'd like to conclude the video with some final thoughts of mine. 1. I maintain that I'm innocent and that my ban statement should be fully revoked. I'm also not to be viewed or treated as a cancelled person. I suppose this is the biggest one. I've proven that I'm not guilty of the two primary defamation charges that are listed in my ban statement, as Leffen did in fact commit the two acts of malice that I've been alleging for years. 2. Please reconsider why I would have done this. Throughout my career, I made a lot of contributions to the community. I did not pivot from making contributions to committing an act of malice, contrary to what I may have led people to believe. I also didn't choose to gamble my career after this many years for no reason. My reasoning for going after Leffen is complicated. I'd been in possession of detailed testimonies which were written about him ever since I was a teenager. The testimonies warned that he had torn apart his local community with lies at a young age, and that he would one day do the same to society on a broader scale. This unavoidably left me with the responsibility to monitor his actions and decide on when to intervene. 3. I intervened at the right time but in the wrong way. I was right about the fact that I had seen enough by the summer of 2021 to know that it was time to say something. However, I was tasked with a difficult obligation at the relatively young age of 26. I was also under a lot of stress and in the middle of an alcohol problem, as I've confessed. I don't think I could have done a poorer job than I did on what I originally produced, but hopefully people see why I viewed this as an obligation now that the case has been refined. 4. I'm willing to forgive anyone who doubted my intentions or made fun of me. I don't deny that I dug my own hole and misconstrued the situation to a strong degree through my original release. I don't fault anyone for doubting me or making fun of me for it. It'd be really appreciated if that could be reciprocated with some forgiveness. 5. I view it as being mandatory that the contents of this video are ruled true by the community and its leadership, and that this video is preserved as a record of proof that Leffen mass manipulated the community between July 2nd, 2020 and June 5th, 2021. It would be inexcusable not to do this after how much evidence I presented. I've also attached direct links to the Evidence.zip testimonies that I've been referencing, as well as the technicals video that I referenced to this video's description. 6. This video was not intended to condone Zero's interactions with Katie in any way, shape, or form. I'd like to be clear about this once again. I'm fully of the opinion that Zero deserves to be banned for his interactions with Katie. However, I'm also of the opinion that Leffen broke the law very excessively when he plotted a conspiracy against Zero and then proceeded to doctor the metagame documentary. 7. I believe that the best outcome, all factors considered, is for neither me nor Leffen to be banned, but for Leffen to be found guilty of everything described in this video. My reasoning for this proposal is extensive, so I'll explain. There is no doubt whatsoever that Leffen would be subject to a high penalty if he was punished to the fullest extent of the law for what I've laid out. However, I technically don't care about that. My highest priority is providing a truthful resource so that everyone can be on the same page. Melee is a niche game with a small community, and so people will endlessly look for solutions to avoid banning players like me or Leffen. I believe the best solution here is to ban neither of us, but to institute some sort of permanent sanction against Leffen. This would surely include monitoring him for the rest of his esports career at bare minimum. 8. This video did not constitute harassment or defamation in any way, shape, or form. This video was a social service, as it constitutes the most accurate resource that's out there on the internet for this crime. Vindicating this video will almost surely prevent more crimes involving social manipulation from occurring in the future. 9. This video concludes the Hacks Leffen saga. I'm clarifying this because I'm sure people are wondering when this is going to end. It's over now. I connected Evidence.zip to present day, and so there's nothing left to say. I maintain that I should be granted a reinstated career with no gag orders or any types of strings attached, as I've covered everything. I'd also like to apologize for the fact that there ever was a saga to begin with, and promise to handle situations like this better from here on out. 10. My highest priorities are to go back to being a competitor and contributor. It would be in the best interest of the community to fully reinstate me, as I was always of benefit and acting in good faith. I mainly just want to go back to competing in events, seeing friends, and doing things like providing educational content and managing my Discord server. That about sums up my goals going forward. With that being said, thanks for watching.